What's going on? We have an important and awesome topic tonight. We are going to talk about how to get rid of quadriceps and patellar tendinitis. And it's such an important topic because I see so many people, especially runners, any kind of athlete, right, who's typically doing a lot of like forceful landing, cross-country runners, track athletes, people who play basketball, right, from that repetitive landing, soccer players especially. It could be anything, all of the above. And it's usually in 20 to 55-year-old females who are going to get it the most commonly. Not to say that males don't get it as well, but that's just kind of the age range based on research and studies that they've done in the past. So a lot of the information I'm going to give you guys tonight on how to get rid of quad and patellar tendinitis comes from an awesome book and a whole wide array of studies as well. And that's through Dr. Aaron Horschig, and the book is called Rebuilding Milo. So if you're really interested in these topics, definitely look at buying this book. I think it's like 20 or 30 bucks on Amazon. Well worth it. I use it for a lot of my mobility screens. I use it for a lot of detailed information, especially helping educate patients. And it's a little bit complex. Excuse me, I can't really talk. So sometimes you gotta look some things up online if you don't understand or you don't have a PT background. But awesome topics. So we're going to talk about 3 really big exercises that you want to do when you're healing from quad or patellar tendinitis, because you don't want to go too hard right out of the gate. Typically, you want to do exercises that cause a 3 out of 10 pain or less. If they're up at a 4, 5, or 6, it's too intensive for you to do, and it's going to cause too much damage to your tendon. So 3 out of 10 is kind of like your kind of yellow light, right? If we're on a yellow, green, red light system. So that means caution. You want to stay at 3 out of 10 or below. And typically that means staying in isometrics, right? Where you're doing like maybe 5 sets of like 10 to 12 repetitions and holding for 15 seconds or so. When you do that for a couple weeks and you keep loading and loading the tendons, because the tendons do love load, they don't love to be stretched, they need to be loaded. Okay, don't get those two mixed up. Then you can move to heavy, slow resistance exercises. What I mean is like a slow box squat tempo, which we're going to go through all those tonight. So let me share my screen with you, and then I'll show you the 3 big exercises that we're going to talk about. All right, the 3 biggies here, we'll blow this up, are decline board squats, Spanish squats, and box squats. These are all awesome exercises, and you can do them all isometrically, or you can do them with a concentric and an eccentric. Isometric just means you're kind of pausing and you're not changing your muscle length. It's like if you ever did a wall sit, that's another great exercise you can do that looks like a Spanish squat. Like imagine there's a wall behind him here, if you can see my cursor, the picture in the middle, and he's just kind of sitting there with his back against the wall and he's holding. That's a great exercise to start with, maybe 30 to 40 second holds, 3 to 5 repetitions, and you do that 2 to 3 times a day, 2 to 3 times a week, right? And that's going to help load up and build up that strength and build up the tensile strength of that actually patellar and that quad tendon, right, guys? Because you can see here on the quad muscles, your quad muscles, all 4 of them form into the quad tendon at the top of the knee, and then they come over the knee and they form into the patellar tendon at the bottom of the knee. So sometimes it goes hand in hand if you develop tendinitis of one versus the other. So typically, we're going to start patients with one of these 3 exercises if they can tolerate it. If they can't, then maybe we need to do a wall sit. Maybe we need to even scale back, do a straight leg raise hold where they're laying on their back. It all depends on like where they're on the stage and how much inflammation they currently have. So decline board squats, these are awesome. You can kind of make your own decline board at home if you wanted to too. You can kind of put a piece of wood on your first step. That works just as well. Just make sure there's something underneath that wood between the step and the wood, so it doesn't kind of roll on you or anything. But this one, right, you're using the decline portion here because that's going to put kind of more quad emphasis into it, and it's going to take kind of the calf out of the movement a little bit. Okay, so it's really going to bias kind of the quadriceps muscles here in the front. All right, so this one's great because you can do a slow lower, right? You can do like a 5-second lower. You can pause at the bottom, make a little bit of an isometric hold. And then what you can do too is if you lower on one leg, you can put both legs on the ground and then push yourself back up. If you have good strength and you don't get a lot of discomfort or pain with it, then you can lower very slowly and you can actually just come right back up without really letting that leg touch the ground. That's a more advanced version of the exercise. Okay, so decline board squats, right? In the book, they recommend doing 3 sets of about 12 to 15 at varying tempos. You want to do those for a couple weeks, and you want to keep increasing the load. If you're sore the next day, that's normal. The soreness should go away in 2 days. If it doesn't go away in 2 to 3 days, then maybe you did a little bit too much weight, or maybe if that pain doesn't go away in 2 to 3 days, maybe you did too much weight and you got to scale it back. And that could mean just changing one of those variables. And by variables, I mean changing the volume, so maybe lowering the amount of sets and reps you're doing, or the intensity, which means lowering the amount of weight you're doing. Always change just one variable at a time. Don't try and change too many, because then you'll get too confused and then you're going to forget what you did, especially if you're not writing it down. So it's really important to kind of keep an eye on how often you're doing these things, how much weight you're using, and how many sets and reps you're doing. All right, so that's decline board squats, number one. Number two is Spanish squats. These aren't done very commonly. You don't see them a ton, especially not in like box gyms or anything like that. They are done in PT clinics a lot, especially like if you're working with like Olympic weightlifters or CrossFitters. So all you're doing is you're setting a band to about knee height, maybe a little bit below, kind of right at your patellar tendon level. And you want that band really, really thick, and you want it pulling around the injured knee. Okay, so his injured knee is the left knee, it's pulling around there. And what the purpose of the band is to keep your trunk more upright when you're squatting. And just like this, you can see how our trunk's upright. It's gonna, again, bias more strengthening for the quad muscles. Right, your vastus lateralis on the outside here, vastus medialis, and then your quadriceps femoris there in the middle. All the quad muscles are kind of targeted with this one. And again, you can also pause at the bottom to an isometric hold. This one really is great on the quads because you're working the quads kind of eccentrically on the way down, so they're lengthening on the way down, and then on the way up, they're shortening, so they're concentrically shortening. Right, so on the way up, what you're trying to do is you're really not trying to let your knees move too much at all in this squat. So that's why this one is different than the decline board squats. In this one, the band is pulling so aggressively, your trunk has to stay upright, and your goal is to not let your knees move forward or back. They can move a couple inches maybe forward, but we don't want them moving much more than that. And what we're doing there also is on the way up is we're trying to push our knees to the wall behind us. So they might move a little bit behind, which is fine. But if that leg's fully straight and is pulling against resistance, it's going to maximally shorten and contract those quad muscles, which is why it's a great exercise for quad or patellar tendinitis. All right, and then the third most advanced one are box squats. So typically I'm waiting till a patient is pain-free with these two, and we've added a significant amount of load where we've gone up at least 10 to 20 pounds over the course of 2 to 4 weeks, and they're doing things about 2 to 3 times a week at least. Okay, so the last one, box squats, is just the most functional of the three, right? This one, you're setting up a box. You can use a bench, a chair, whatever. You don't have to use a barbell on your back. You can use a dumbbell for a goblet squat. You can use a kettlebell as well. Either will work. Some people use dumbbells on their shoulders, holding them like this to simulate a front squat. Either or works. So what you're doing on this one is you're doing a slow lower, right? So like a nice 3 to 5 second lower. And again, same thing. You're trying not to let your knees go too far over your toes. Just like in the Spanish squat, you're trying to keep them in that same position. And then you're kind of aiming your butt back and sitting on the box very briefly, and then pushing through the feet to drive yourself up. The important thing is, like when you sit on the box, you don't want to sit down and then lean backwards, right? Because then you lose tension on your quads. That's a no-no. What you want to do is when you sit down is then you want to come right back up, right? So those knees should not move from that position of when you're sitting to when you're standing. And if they don't move, you're going to maximally contract those quads. And if you want to really squeeze the quads and really work them, then you're going to think and imagine you have a band pulling your leg forward, and you got to push your knees back to the box behind you. And that's going to even get more of those quads contracting. All right, so those are the three big exercises, right? Just to recap, we have decline board squats. Again, you can make your own decline board at home trying those. Spanish squats using a thick resistance band. And I don't mean those little bands that you use for rotator cuff series, like where you go in internal and external rotation. I mean a thick band that you would use to help assist you do a pull-up if you can't do a pull-up by yourself with body weight. All right, that's right around the patellar tendon level, right below the knee, right, doing the squats. And then the third one and final one is box squats, right? Barbell, you can use a kettlebell, dumbbell, doesn't matter. And that one you're slowly lowering and then exploding up, pushing the knees back, and the knees should not move on the way up. So give those three a try if you're dealing with a lot of kind of pain that's tender right above the kneecap or right below the kneecap. If it's somewhere else or you're getting a lot of clicking or something like that, then you need to see a physical therapist or you need to see an orthopedic doctor and get that assessed accurately, okay? Because I'm not saying these are the right exercises for you. I'm just saying if you're someone who jumps pretty consistently with your sports or you're a runner, this is most commonly something that could be going on, and you might have some weak quads, which this will help with, okay? Because tendons do not like to be stretched. they love to be loaded. All right, so we have to keep loading them over time. And they don't get loaded enough a lot of times in physical therapy or by people because they're nervous, because sometimes they have pain with these things and they want to kind of scale things back a little bit. So give this a try. If you want to be accurately assessed, we do mobility assessments, guys. We do have a form. If you qualify to work with us, we will let you know. If you want access to that form, just send us a DM. You can send us a direct message on Facebook at Corey Hoffner, or you can send us a DM on Instagram at Dr. Choffner PTSC. All right, we'll put that down in the comments below. If you have any questions, please put those in the comments down below. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channels. New YouTube channel. We're gonna have many videos kind of popping up there that you guys can check out. All right, thanks so much, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you in the next one.